Hello, hello. I'm going to tell you about a belief that I held for a long time. In fact, I still hold it, that I thought was keeping me safe. It felt a little bit like wisdom. It felt like self-awareness. It felt like I was being realistic. We love that word. About how the world works. And it has literally been costing me the things I've said I wanted. And so the belief is that if I ask for too much, I will lose what I already have. That one sentence, sitting quietly underneath every conversation I've had, every negotiation I've entered into. Yeah. So today I want to show you how that belief works and not in your favor, how it hides, and how you can find it before you have to make a decision for you. So welcome to the Black Doctor Collective podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sheneka Horn. Before we get into it, I want you to make sure that you've subscribed to the YouTube channel or to the podcast on Spotify or Apple. It takes 2 seconds. Just hit that button, like the episodes so that I know what content you guys like and what to make more of. Okay. Have you done it? Great. Welcome to the Black Doctor Collective podcast. We as Black doctors are in a unique position. We can change our communities, healthcare, and the world. Of course, we start by changing the way we see and value ourselves. I'm your host, Dr. Sheneka Horn, pediatrician and physician coach, travel extraordinaire. I am so happy to have you here and listening. So let's get into it. So today I'm going to walk you through how I identified the belief that was running my career without my permission and what it's cost me and what changes when I name it. And I want to help you find yours. So the first question is, when you think about asking for what you actually want at work, what's the first fear that comes up for you? Not like the logical concern, right? But what's the fear underneath? Because so much of what we do is fear-based, right? So much of what we do is scarcity-based. And that belief is usually the thing that's actually making your decisions, not you, the belief. I've been teaching negotiation for years. And even this year, in my most recent job, I realized that I was not fully practicing what I was teaching. I was negotiating. You know, your girl loves a negotiation, okay? I was asking, I was getting good outcomes, right? But I was definitely leaving things on the table. And I feel like I really stopped short of what I wanted, like fully, the full vision, right? I bought into pieces, but not the full thing. And I would space out what I was asking for because I didn't want it to seem like I was asking for a lot or too much. And always finding a reason why I should downgrade the thing I was asking for just a little bit, like my own internal compromise. And I know I tell you not to do that all the time. Like, don't tell yourself no before someone else does, right? But there's just something innate within us that we're like worried about rejection. We're worried about the judgments of others. And we've talked about this on the podcast before, right? Like, you have a part of your brain called the amygdala that is very much based on survival. And survival requires community to some degree, right? So, of course, you want to please the community. You want to please the people that give you money, right? You know where your bread is buttered. And internally, if you're not paying attention to that, if you're not paying attention to the fact that you are in survival mode, it will be running all of your decisions and you will be making all of your decisions from a very scared place. So when I think about it, when I think about who I have been, what I have desired, the ask was not too much. I just feared how it was going to be perceived. The thing about being really smart as a doctor, you guys are all very intelligent. Most people listening to this podcast are high achieving, high earning individuals. People who have drive, ambition, tend to be intelligent. We can be really, really self aware. Like we can see the thing, right? So sometimes it's not a matter of fact of not seeing what's happening, although that happens. That happens to me all the time. Sometimes in the aftermath, I'm like, oh, that's what was going on. That was the reason why. But sometimes we're aware, and especially if you've been here a while and you've listened to the belief flow and you are starting to understand your brain more and more, you can name the thing, you can label it. And then you can somehow still be working around the belief that exists, right? Because for me, I was subconsciously deciding to work around it. I don't think I had fully examined it. I wasn't coaching myself. And I think that that's also fear based, right? What would examining it require me to do, right? Because then I have to take a step because consciously, I would never want to make the decision to downgrade what I'm asking for or to never get what I want. So in my last clinic, it's still so weird to say last clinic because I'd been there for over 2 years, right? The longest I've been someplace since residency and fellowship. And really in fellowship, I was moving every 6 months. So really the longest place I've been since residency. I had negotiated a part-time schedule, an hourly rate. Like I was so excited about my hourly rate. That's another caveat, right? It's like you're excited about the money to the point where you'll turn a blind eye. The flexibility of my vacation schedule, the amount of decision-making power I had or thought I had, really, that was also a delusion. Things that most physicians are told are not possible or are straight up denied sometimes, right? So instead of seeing that as evidence that I was a good negotiator, I started telling myself that it was only happening because the environment was all dysfunctional, right? That if anyone was truly paying attention, that maybe I'd have less flexibility. And I think that was based on the idea that people don't want to give you what you want, right? So I had convinced myself that this dysfunction was the price of my perks, that I had to tolerate one in order to keep the other. So I swallowed things I should not have swallowed. I absorbed things that were not mine to carry. I stayed way longer than I should have because leaving felt like giving up all these things that I had worked for, right? And the community that I had built. And the whole time I was running that clinic, I was fighting for the employees to have what they needed, making sure people felt valued, advocating for their schedules and their well-being, because I know that happy employees stay, that they work hard, right? That they deserve to be treated well, period. So in essence, I was doing for others what I would not fully do for myself. And the belief underneath it all was that the employers do not actually want to give you what you want. And what I wanted was too much. So I'd better just hold on to it and not try to change it up too much. That's not logical. I want to judge myself right now for this thought, right? Like that doesn't even make sense. That's what my amygdala is saying. She's a little judgy McJudgerson. Because I had direct evidence against that fact, and it was still there, quietly, right? Putting a ceiling on everything that I was reaching for. My next question to you is there something that you would have wanted to ask for? A salary, a schedule, a different role that you have been circling for months without actually asking for? And I want you to think about what's the story that you've been telling yourself about why you have not asked, why you have not moved in the direction of what you wanted, whether it's asking at work or knowing that they're not going to give it to you and leaving that space. What is the story you're telling yourself? What are the limiting beliefs that you are holding that are prohibiting you from moving forward, moving closer to what it is you actually desire? Because that story is where your belief is hiding. I know people talk about sitting with and sitting in discomfort, but you actually have to sit for some time to discover these things, right? Because beliefs don't announce themselves. They hide. They show up as your reasons, right? The reason the timing is not right. The reason the employer, you know, is taking their time with recognition. The reason you should wait until the next review cycle, the reason you should be expressing gratitude instead of asking for more. The reasons feel logical. The belief underneath them is not logical. It's the fear wearing the costume of strategy or, like we said, logic. Honestly, the more self-aware you are, the more convincing the costume becomes. And I know that that's what was happening with me, right? I just told myself all of the reasons, and I used the reasons to justify staying or not asking. So let's talk about the belief flow. For those of you who are new here, my coach, Dr. Kimmy, who's been on the podcast and actually is due for a part two, taught me this belief flow. And I had actually learned a similar version just prior to meeting her, but hers makes the most sense for fluidity. When you have a belief, right? Sometimes you don't know the belief is there, that's fine. The beliefs create all these thoughts, right? So my belief is like my employer doesn't really want to give me what I want. And so the thought there for me was I shouldn't ask for more. I don't want anyone to notice. Maybe this is happening because they don't notice because they can't possibly want to be this flexible or want to pay me this much or whatever. The thoughts create feelings, right? We have all of these feelings in our body. So overwhelm, anxiety, inadequacy, exposure, so many things, uncertainty, all of it's we have this desire towards safety and we tend to feel unsafe. And then those feelings drive the actions, right? What do you do or not do? In this case, it's like not asking, not communicating, not leaving the job, right? You become inactive as much as you have certain actions, like you downplay things, you agree to things you don't really want to agree to, you stay longer than you should. The actions produce a result. And the result is like, do you see how I'm here in this place, not getting everything I want? And it really feeds right back into the belief of I cannot get what I want because I'm asking for too much. And it just becomes this cyclical pattern, right? So my belief, what I want is too much, and asking will cost me what I have, led to the thought of this dysfunction is the price I pay for my perks, for the flexibility. So I should be grateful. I should decide where I'm compromising. I should ask less. My feeling sometimes is resigned. We convince ourselves that we're grateful, but we're resentful at the same time, right? And trapped in the situation that I had partially created. We have a notion that gratitude means that we shouldn't want more, but we can be grateful and still want something else, right? We can be grateful to the point. We can be grateful for the opportunity that exposes what our desires truly are. We can be grateful for the moments, the strife that creates our desire to move to something else, right? We can be grateful instead of being resentful. We can be grateful and still have desires. So my action was tolerating, not asking for what I deserve, not requiring it, right? Staying. Those were my actions. And my result is that a situation that I was in just kept getting worse because I had decided the dysfunction was a necessary evil. Evil being the key words. If the result is that you are not getting what you want, I need you to trace it back. The result is not the problem. The environment is not the problem. It's your belief because you can leave the environment, right? The belief at the top of this pathway is the problem. You cannot think your way out of the belief because the belief is what's creating your thoughts. You have to name the belief. You have to examine it. You have to decide whether your internal discomfort is worth the silence. Is your discomfort with not asking, with not examining what you want, worth the loss of the things you actually want? Are you willing to lose what you truly desire because you don't want to be uncomfortable? I want you to ask yourself, what are you afraid of What do you think will happen if you exact for what you want? Write it out, say it out. What's the worst case scenario? Because that starts to lose power the moment you can see it clearly outside of your own head. I mean, you can spend time. I like to do this with my therapist, right? Going back, like, where did the belief come from? Is it actually mine or did I inherit it somewhere along the way? Usually from a family member, a parent, a colleague, somebody. And finally, is there evidence that this is really true? Not the evidence that it could be true, because we could find evidence for coulds all the time. What is it true that you have to stay, that you have to compromise in order to get the perks, that you have to tolerate dysfunction? For me, the evidence was often the opposite because I have negotiated well, right? My employees thrived when they were advocated for. The dysfunction was not proof that I needed to tolerate it. It was proof that the environment was broken. The belief was just a story, and I had been living inside of it like it was a fact. So finish this sentence out loud right now. If I ask for exactly what I want, I'm afraid that whatever came after that blank, that is your belief. That is what we're working with. Write it down. Don't just think it, write it down. Okay. The belief that almost cost me everything was not super dramatic. It was quiet. It was reasonable sounding. It was dressed up as self-awareness. And it was making my decisions for me without my permission for years. And it still kind of does, right? Until I work on changing it, it will continue to do that. The moment I named it, it started to lose its power. The moment I named it, I couldn't unknow that I had a choice. I had to decide whether I was going to be accommodating to that belief that never actually protected me. Really, it exposed me to all the dysfunction. Or whether I was going to ask for what I wanted and find out what was actually true. So you have the same choice. But first, you have to find, name, and write out the belief. That's where I want you to start. Okay? So if this episode gave you something, share it with a person who might be, in fact, I had people who might be living inside this belief that they have not yet named, right? Yeah, that's what I want for you. So I think actually next week is my final solo episode that I'm recording for this season because I like to take a little summer vacation. So I'm going to close out with some personal things next week and I want you here for it. So again, if you have not subscribed, you will not know. So help yourself. I know I don't like notifications, but subscribing will at least pop it up when you do log into things, right? So I want you to have a good week. I'm off to my new position, my new job that I found less than a month later after my exit that has so many more of the tenets that I desire, including how I get to connect with patients, the ability to have input. These things still exist in multiple places. I want that for you. Have a good week. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast. And what I want you to do next is link us everywhere you can. Instagram at The Black Doctor. Just become part of our collective. I want you here. Thanks. Until next time. Bye.